My name is Frank, and today I'm going to tell you a story that began deep in a dark forest, where the trees grew so tightly together that sunlight could barely penetrate through their thick canopy. This place was called Lisivka, and no one could say exactly how long it had been there. But one thing was certain. This place was home to more than just people. It hid ancient secrets. In the heart of this village stood an old cottage where an elderly woman named Maria lived. Her face was weathered and wrinkled, her hands roughened by years of working with wood, but it was her eyes that held something deeper, something unsettling. I remember well how she would often walk through the forest to a solitary oak, and every time I felt that she wasn't just going for a walk. She was waiting for something important. You might not believe it, but this old woman was the last descendant of a family that had guarded the knowledge of the forest's hidden mysteries. And so one day, I decided to follow her. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision, but one that had been brewing for a while. I had always felt that something was off about Maria, about the way she seemed to vanish into the forest without a trace, and then reappear as if nothing had happened. I decided to follow her, knowing this would be my chance to learn more, to uncover the truth behind the secrets of Lisivka. The forest was dense that day, even more so than usual. The air seemed thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, and the sounds of birds and rustling leaves were muted as I walked behind her. She moved with a kind of quiet confidence, her steps deliberate and sure, as if she knew the forest's every path. As I followed her deeper into the woods, I noticed something strange. The farther we went, the quieter the world became. It was as though the forest itself had swallowed the noise of the outside world. We reached the oak tree as the sun began to set, casting long, eerie shadows across the forest floor. It stood alone in a clearing, its gnarled branches twisting into the sky like a network of ancient veins. I had seen this tree many times before, but today it felt different, more imposing, as if it were watching us. Maria stopped in front of it and looked up at the tree, her expression unreadable. For a long moment, she simply stood there, silent and unmoving. Then, without warning, she knelt down and began to murmur something under her breath, her voice low and rhythmic. It sounded like an ancient language, one I had never heard before. Her words seemed to carry on the wind, swirling through the leaves as though they were being carried by some unseen force. I stood frozen, unable to look away. I knew I shouldn't be here, knew I was trespassing in a place where I didn't belong, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from Maria and the oak. I was drawn to it, as if the very earth beneath my feet had rooted me to the ground. The more she whispered, the more the air around us seemed to vibrate, as though something ancient and powerful was awakening. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the chanting stopped. Maria rose to her feet and turned to face me, her eyes locking with mine. There was no anger in her gaze, no surprise, just a quiet understanding, as if she had known all along that I was there. I could feel her power, a presence that filled the space around us, radiating from her like heat from the sun. "You've seen it now," she said, her voice soft but heavy with meaning. "The oak has called, and so has the forest. You cannot turn back now." I didn't understand what she meant, but I nodded silently, my mind racing with questions. What had I just witnessed? What was Maria doing here? And why had she kept this part of her life a secret from the villagers? As we walked back to the village in silence, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. The world felt different now, as if the very air around me had changed. I couldn't explain it, but the forest felt alive in a way I had never noticed before, and I knew, deep down, that whatever Maria was waiting for, it was only a matter of time before it would reveal itself. After that night, I couldn't stop thinking about what I had seen. I found myself wandering the forest more often, drawn to the oak, to the eerie pull I had felt there. The villagers were no help. They spoke of the forest with reverence, but also with fear, as if they knew things they weren't willing to share. The older folk would whisper about strange happenings in the woods, of people who had ventured too deep and never returned, and of the ancient power that lay beneath the surface of the earth. I began to seek out those elders who still lived in the village. Old men and women who had seen the world change, whose memories stretched back decades, even centuries. I asked them about the forest, about the oak, and most importantly, about Maria. At first, they were hesitant to speak, as if the very mention of it would unleash something dangerous. But I was persistent, and eventually, one of the oldest men in the village, a man named Rihori, agreed to tell me what he knew. The forest has always been a place of power, he told me one evening, his voice hoarse with age. In the old days, before the land was settled, the forest was sacred. People came from far and wide to seek its blessings, to commune with the spirits of the earth. But that was a long time ago, before the world became too busy, too corrupt. Now, only a few remember the old ways. I pressed him further, asking about Maria's family, but Rihori only shook his head. Her family were the guardians, he said. They kept the forest's secrets safe. They protected the land from those who sought to use its power for dark purposes. But now, Maria is the last of them. She has inherited the task, whether she wants it or not. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Rihori had said. The guardians of the forest, the dark forces that sought its power, and Maria's role in all of it. I didn't understand why she hadn't told me any of this. Was she hiding something? Or was she simply waiting for the right time to reveal the truth? The next day, I returned to the oak. The forest seemed quieter than usual, as though it was holding its breath, waiting for something. As I approached the tree, I saw Maria standing there, her hands resting on the bark of the oak, her eyes closed in concentration. She was whispering again, but this time the words were different, stronger, more urgent. It was as if the oak itself was responding to her call. I stepped forward, unsure of what to do, but before I could speak, Maria opened her eyes. They were wide, glowing faintly in the dim light of the forest, and for the first time, I saw something in them, something that made me realize just how much she knew and how little I understood. "It's time," she said softly, her voice trembling with emotion. "The time for waiting is over. The forest is calling, and we must answer." I didn't understand what Maria meant at first, but the air around us had changed. The vibrations from the oak were palpable now, and the ground beneath my feet seemed to hum with energy. It was as if the very earth itself was alive and aware of us. I felt a cold chill run down my spine as the realization hit me. The oak wasn't just a tree, it was a gateway, a conduit to something far older and more powerful than anything I had ever imagined. Maria took my hand, her grip surprisingly firm for someone so frail. "Come," she said, leading me closer to the oak. "The answers are here. The forest will show you what you need to know." We stood in front of the oak for what seemed like hours, the world around us fading away as if time itself had stopped. And then, slowly, the ground began to shift. The roots of the oak stirred, twisting and turning, like the tentacles of some ancient creature. At the base of the tree, a crack appeared in the earth, slowly widening to reveal a hidden chamber beneath the roots. The air grew colder still, and I could feel the pull of the chamber, calling me to step forward. "This is where it begins," Maria whispered. "This is where the old prophecy is fulfilled." Without another word, she stepped into the chamber, and I followed her, my heart pounding in my chest. Inside, the air was thick with an energy I could barely comprehend, and as we descended into the depths of the earth, I realized that this wasn't just a forest. It was the heart of something ancient, something eternal. The oak was more than a tree. It was a living testament to the world's forgotten past, a world where magic and reality were one and the same. And now, it was awakening again.